Welcome to the Solemn Vanguard channel. Today we have a blast from the past where we use Time Leap inside ZTB. And as always, you can get this beautiful Chronojet Dragon Z and Chrono Dran Z playmat at the link in the description. Now, I will say, rather than going over a very specific deck list, I will go over the choices you can be making inside this deck list, because this deck has stopped a few times recently, but not so often that you could say, whoa, this is the objectively most competitive list. So I will be going over those options without necessarily saying run it like this. So for grade 3, we of course start with Chronojet Dragon Z. There is really no reason why you wouldn't run him. He's just a vastly superior version of Chronojet Dragon G. We won't be running Gear Groovy or Next Stage anymore because Chronovisor Heritage really needs those ZTB specific units. And also just the value this card provides with the free striding, with the field disruption, with the hard minus on your opponent and a hard plus on yours. It's like there is no reason not to run him. He's simply too good. Then we get into the actual interesting debate, the backup grade 3s. Because this deck can run many and simultaneously run none at all. The grade 2s are simply so good and there are so many options. I personally run Chrono Fang Tiger G because he at least does something, also has some disruption going on. Now, you have people who can also be running Ox, because sure, it's a slightly larger beat stick. However, because of Heritage, you will start flipping down stuff, and so you won't really get all the value you would get from him in something like the original ZTB deck with Groovy and Next Stage. Now, you could also run maybe some extra Chrono Jets just to get your ride consistency a little bit better. However, I would argue that's not very necessary. You could also run Kodal, the Snake Boy, to get some counter charge, but I feel like with the crit, you don't really need that. Now, grade 2 is where things get spicy. You can run History Maker Dragon, because I will go over the combo in a few minutes, but if you know already, well, you just have the Melem shenanigans as well as some other stuff that's new. So History Maker is like almost an auto include in these Time Leap decks, but you could run like 2 or 3, in my case 4, because I really like to rely on this combo piece. Another new addition that makes everything actually really good is Metal Party Dragon. The amount of shenanigans this card can do and the multi-attacks and the number hitting, like there's some really cool plays you can do with him. I will go over it in a second. You can also run Cruising Boy because it's still a hard plus and you can fetch it with him. You can also run Ijiji, not necessarily 4, you could easily run 2 or something, but it is a really cool beat stick and that triggers off your Metal Party calls amongst other things. You could also run Rewind Tiger for those early pluses and a little bit of aggro. You could still run your Unicorn, though his value diminishes the more Time Leap stuff you use. Some people started running Caliboom as well for that early starter hate. I see why. Getting rid of a Chrono Dran Z in the mirror is super powerful. Getting rid of a deranged singular against Charot is also super powerful. So there's merit to it, but I'm not a fan. And then of course one of the stars of the deck is Delayed Blazer Dragon. Together with, I will get to her soon, but Lishma, you can do some really interesting Time Leap plays, especially together with Chrono Tiger. For grade 1, I would argue Arca is the only one you want to run, unless you are going 100% in on the dust shenanigans and you really want that unflip PG. But generally, I would say Arca is still the best choice in every single version of the build. Then of course, we can also still run our Transit Dragons for soul building and also early plussing on first stride. However, you could start playing around with the numbers. I've seen people run 2 or 3. Personally, I still stick with 4 because I do like the soul on the plussing, but there's a very good reason not to run him at 4. However, do keep in mind that a lot of stuff uses soul, and if you start running the Lishma, that's an extra soul right there, so there's definitely value in the higher numbers. Now, the star of a Time Leap deck is of course our Melem, so you definitely want to be running her at either 2 or 3 or even 4 if you want to go really balls to the wall. There's some Urwatar plays combos, I will show them soon, you probably know them already, but there are some twists together with Metal Party that I will be going over. Just really tiny multi-attacks that have lots of value when you're on a dust turn. You of course still have your stride fodder. There is no reason not to run this. But since you can actually stride from the drop zone, you could lower the numbers to 3 or 2 instead of 4. Then we have Lego Boy. You definitely want to be running him. I'm not saying which ratios. You could go for 1 or 2 or 3. I've seen some people going to 4, going all in on him, and that's fine. He does create cool numbers, but the more time leap stuff you use, the worse his numbers get. So do keep that in mind. Now you could still run a Hegalt, because she gives you some soul charge and simultaneously can also counter charge for you if you find it necessary. Then there's another star of the deck, Lishma. Lishma, together with Delayed Blazer, the grade 2, just can create completely new fields. So you could do all your multi-attacks, swing with your Vanguard, use Lishma into Delayed Blazer and your Chrono Tiger G, and you have a full new field to start playing with. Well, full, I mean, still some really solid extra attacks right there. Now for grade 0s, there are some interesting choices. Usually, you will want to use Chrono Dran Z as your starter, purely for all the shenanigans you can do with it. However, there's definitely still value in maybe putting a Chrono Dran into your main deck, and maybe even a TikTok worker if you want to go really hard on the time leap plays. Not everyone does that. Some people play just this one, some people play just these two, some people play these two, some people play these three. It just depends on how you want to build this deck, and I don't think right now there is an objectively best list yet. Really still a new kind of hybrid. Then for triggers, lots of people are starting to run hard thump worker again, because we are no longer 100% reliant on Pony or Avenir Phoenix or Gear Next, since we also have Visor and Dust, that it doesn't matter that your hand isn't full of ZTBs. You can easily still play around that and still get that value from that extra soul and the drawing. Now this one is an actual staple because it's just a really free counter charge. It's like Gear Chronicle's personal Supersonic Sailor. There's no reason not to run this. If you want to go hard on the crits, you could run him, but you could also run a draw or more draws. I've seen decks running 6 draws in this Time Leap ZTB hybrid. You could also still run your sheep if you still want to get those multi-attacks. However, the more time leap you run, the less ideal that becomes. And of course, the one star of the deck, if you're going to be running time leap, you probably want to use Urwatar because you will be plussing really hard of it. And then you, of course, generally want to be running your 4 heals, this one for the counter charge and the soul charge. Now for the G zone, you don't really have a lot of special options. Of course, you have your Dust. The very reason time leap is so good, well, apart from really insane multi-attacks, is with Dust and those multi-attacks, it becomes really hard for your opponent to guard. You will generally auto-win on your Dust if you got the counter blast and everything is ready. Then we have 2 Pegasus. You could run 1, but personally I have the room for 2, so why not? Because if you go into Pegasus and flip it up, you do get those pluses regardless. 1 is enough. 2 Gear Next, because multi-attacks are really good, obviously, and you don't need more since you can go into Virus and flip them down anyway. Then 2 Avenir Phoenix, for if everything is going wrong. Sure, you can get some multi-attacks, but generally there is not a lot of value in this if you have your setup to do other things. 1 Chrono Visor Heritage, because this deck isn't 100% reliant on that really long game, because you do have a lot of aggro. Generally 1 Heritage is enough. Then 1 Metallica Phoenix, depending on how your opening hand works out, either you have the ZTB stuff to do a really good plussing split Pegasus turn, or you don't. And if you have all the time leap stuff in your hand, you might as well go full on ham with this card, with the Melem and the History Maker combos, and start doing some insane plussing. Then 1 Altered Dragon, for if you magically can't stride. 1 Seabreeze, because it is a G deck. 1 Header Around, because there is still lots of value in actually getting rid of plays of your opponent, especially against Dark Irregular, where they will be coming at you in full force. You can't use 0s or 1s. You can use this to guard the first attack and then get rid of the second Baleful Repressor. 1 of this because you get really high numbers. 1 of this to recycle something like an Urwatar. And then 2 of the ZTB G Guardian if you want to force heritage numbers or just want really high numbers for almost free. So now to go over some fun time leap combos right here. So let's say you did your first stride. You ended it with a Melem going into your Urwatar and you put it behind here. For the simple fact that sure, this is a 4K, but since you have your split Pegasus face up, this becomes a 27 or even 28, and that way with a 4 you hit magic numbers. So depending on how your opponent is set up, can he still take damage for those defensive triggers and so forth, you will want to use other attack patterns. So don't really watch that, but watch the actual combo. So let's say you attack first with your Vanguard. So this would be 32 or 31, depending on how many split Pegasus you have. You would go your triple drive, hit absolutely nothing. Doesn't really matter because you will still be doing some insane plays. By the way, this is your bind zone. Let's say you bound this to stride and then bound this to stride. You could even do a version of this combo with just this one here. So you did that. Then you go 25. So then they both go into standby. You bind, skill, you bind, you get your cards. Then you can go for 13 again. Then you go with your History Maker, use History Maker skill, time leap your Urwatar, get your Melem, and watch this, because this now goes to the drop zone, you actually have your Stride Fodder back for next turn. Urwatar skill happens because it's bound, goes into deck, you draw your 2, you send something back. Now normally you will want to send the Melem back because you want Melems in your deck at all times. Oh, and also don't forget to actually like restand him and pay the cost and whatnot. So now you have this setup right here. You swing with this. Wow, a heal, fun times. There's no real point to activating his skill because she doesn't get the plus for Metal Pulsar. So now you just attack for 18 right there. Send her back to the deck. Get your Urwatar back so you can next turn do the exact same thing over again. So you did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 attacks. Did some plussing. You're set up to stride for free next turn. And you're set up to do your time leap shenanigans again next turn. So this way you have this exact setup yet again. You will generally draw a lot in this deck because it's very possible you actually popped a 0. Instead of having this, you would have a transit. So that's just a free plus yet again. You will probably have another party dragon in your hand real easy. Or next turn you could pop a 1 and get a party from your deck. And then you're just set up to do the exact same combo on maybe your heritage turn. If you were to do your heritage turn next turn, you could do this exact combo, end your turn, get another turn, and be set up to do that exact combo yet again. Now, of course, against a deck that can pop off the Urwatar, you definitely don't want to do that final Melem Surge, because then you will just lose this forever. You generally don't want to have to Ulugu to send it back. So that is just one of the many ZTB leap combos you could be doing. There are definitely more, so if you want me to make a video on that, let me know in the comments down below. That was it for today's video. If you liked it, please subscribe to the Solemn Vanguard channel and click the bell button to stay up to date. Also, yeah, you can't really see the playmat right now, but you know it's awesome. So you can go to www.zerodamagegaming.com and pick it up. Use the code LAUNCH to get 10% off your first mat. And I will see you soon. Ciao.